Hello everyone, my name is Scott Cumming and I am the founder and president of a nonprofit called Dyslexia Together. So tonight we're on our 5th basic writing course and I have a question for Kelly. So Kelly, we all know that it's really important to have a good resume when going to a new job. So what are the key elements that we should have in a resume?
Yes. So we're going to talk a little bit more about resume writing tonight, but it's really a place where you want to be the centerpiece, right? And so a lot of people may have difficulty kind of bragging about themselves or talking about all of your highlights, but you really have to push and be in that uncomfortable space for a little bit, and you really just want to center yourself and all of your experience, education, your background, your skills. And so it's really all about figuring out the best way to highlight that on one piece of paper because you don't get a lot of space.
Right.
So we're going to talk tonight about what to prioritize first to have the best resume.
Fantastic. Your teacher, Kelly Lawler.
All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Maynard Public Library, and I want to thank Scott for having us here tonight. We are doing our basic writing course, and we're up to session 5 tonight, where we are just trying to talk about reading and improve our writing skills. We really want to use all of the unique strengths that we have and realizing how we can make our writing just to that next degree. So that's what we're working on tonight. And last time we talked a little bit about poetry. We had some examples of poets. We talked about modern poets. And we talked about how sometimes teachers are really trying to focus on teaching poets that are living today. And so I have a few more examples to go over on poetry. We had a few assignments that you had to write. One was something you should know. So what is one thing that, someone could know about you that you don't always like to share? Poetry really puts us into that uncomfortable place, but because it pushes us a little bit further to go outside of our boundaries and to really write a better piece. So we're going to talk about some poetry today, and I kind of wanted to start with a story. I have lots of books today that I brought in to our class, and so we will be highlighting various books and various authors. One of my favorite poems that I like to start the year off with my students is from a book called Winning Every Day by Lou Holtz. You may know him as a famous Notre Dame football coach. Well, really what this is, and this will be our jumping off point today. There's a poem in here I'll read to you. But as you can see, there's really a bunch of short stories. And he talks about his life experience. He talks about his teaching, his coaching. And he just has all of these really quick, flash kind of fiction short stories that help to improve your winning every day and to make sure that you kind of have the right mindset to go about being successful in your life, in your job, in your career. So what he likes to talk about, he talks about one of his all-time favorite football players, Alton Maiden. So this was in the 90s, and Notre Dame was playing a big game against Navy, their traditional rivalry. And Alton Maiden was a struggling student. He was on the Notre Dame football team, and there were 2 semesters that he could not keep his grades up. So he experienced a challenge that he really had to get over because there's such a strict policy at Notre Dame that he was cut from the team for that next season and that next semester. He wasn't even allowed to take classes at Notre Dame anymore. However, he had all this drive and determination, and he went to a community college and worked really hard, studied, found his dedication, found his love of learning a little bit that he may have lost prior to that. And he was able to bring up his grades, get reinstated into Notre Dame, and to be back on that football team to play in the big Notre Dame Navy game. So If you know anything about Notre Dame and Navy, this big rivalry takes place every few years in Ireland. Notre Dame, Fighting Irish, right? So the football team goes to Ireland. They're in Dublin. They are playing at a huge stadium. I'm pretty sure it was Croke Park that they were able to play in. And this was the first time Alton Maiden had been in Ireland before. So they had done some, tours around the city. I don't know if it was before or after the game. And they go to this old monastery. And he's in this very old cemetery dating back hundreds of years. And he's walking through the cemetery and he's looking at all the tombstones. And there's one thing that he thinks about, and he writes it down and he pens a poem. All right, so you may have heard different versions of this poem. This is the one that I've pulled from this book, but there are other books that are called The Dash, and that's the title of his poem. The Dash by Alton Maiden, a Notre Dame football player. I have seen death staring me with my own eyes, in a way many cannot know. I've seen death take others, but still leave me here below. I've heard many mother cries, but death has refused to hear. In my life, I have seen many faces filled with many, many tears. After death has come and gone, a tombstone sits for many to see, but it serves no more than a symbol of a person's memory. Under the person's name, it reads the date of birth, dash, and the date the person passed. But the more I think about the tombstone, the only important thing is the dash. Yes, I see the name of the person, but that I might forget. I also read the date of birth and death, but even that may not stick. But thinking about the person, I can't help but think to remember the dash, because it represents a person's life, and that will always last. So when you begin to charter your life, make sure you are on a positive path, because people may forget your birth and death, but they will never forget your dash. So I just really like to start the year with that poem with my students because it really starts thinking about goals, right? What goals do you want to create this year? What path do you want to be on personally, academically? And then, there's also that dash, everyone, they'll forget, but they will never forget your dash. You kind of have that play on words. He's a football player. He has to run fast, right? And then there's also the dash that has another meaning, as in poetry. We're always looking for the multiple meanings and trying to make as many connections as possible and express that in a short poem, a short story, a novel. And the dash here, on a tombstone, he's talking about a punctuation mark. And I think we talked about punctuation a few sessions ago. And so something that we should talk about is if you're looking at a tombstone and you see that punctuation mark right between the date someone was born and the date someone has passed, it's a tiny dash, which we actually call a hyphen. So technically, the dash in the tombstone is not a dash but a hyphen because it's shorter, and that we just use that to connect words, names, and numbers. The dash is used in sentences, and it's really to make more of a dramatic pause in your writing. It's kind of more of an interruption in the middle of a sentence versus just the hyphen that we kind of use all the time when we're writing dates. So, a few things going on in here. Poems are small, but you got to unpack them. Short stories we'll talk about today, and we'll specifically talk about flash fiction, which is also very short. And so you have to unpack that too. It's hard for writers to pack so much in to less words, but that's what we'll talk about today. All right? So we're highlighting dyslexic adults in our adult writing class today. And so this is just a quote from Pablo Picasso. He's one of the most prolific and creative artists of the 20th century. He created paintings that reflected viewpoints and perspectives that were artistic and literal, okay, talking a little bit about those double meanings, that changed the way that the world looked at art. And we're talking tonight, this whole class, this adult writing class, we're really talking about accepting the way that you think and the way that you see the world and using it as your power. And so Pablo Picasso, what I really like that he said, I paint objects, at the very bottom of that quote, I paint objects as I think of them, not as I see them. So he used the way that his mind worked to his benefit, and he had this creative outlet, and he became widely successful from his paintings. So that Pablo Picasso is someone who we're celebrating today, and I want you to continue to think about him as we move on. All right, so like we normally do, 5 minutes to write a quick story. So we are going to open up our journals, grab a pen or a pencil, and we are looking at an image today, and we are going to use this as a jumping off place of creativity. So this we have here reminds me of Ireland, but maybe it reminds someone else of Scotland or Iceland, somewhere else. It's a phone booth in the wilderness. So you are going to tell us a story. It can be real or it can be made up. So we're talking a little bit about fiction versus nonfiction. It can be from your own experiences, which would be real, right? Nonfiction. Or it can be completely made up, which would be fiction, something that just came out of your imagination. So let's take a look at the picture. Let's take 5 minutes to do a quick write and to come up with something creative. All right, we'll be back. All right, everybody, we are done. 5 minutes is up for our quick write. I hope you enjoy quick writes. The best way to improve your writing is to keep writing every day. And these picture prompts, I hope, are helping add some fun to that a little bit. So I did not utilize the background in my writing, which I regret now a little bit because this scenery is beautiful, and I could have talked more about that in my quick write, but right away my brain went to just a memory of my childhood, and so I just lost my page. I just started writing about old telephones that my grandparents had when I was growing up. And this is what I started to think about. All right, here we go. Phone booth in the wilderness. I wish I focused on the phone booth and the wilderness. My story did not. The only phone in my grandparents' home was an old round dial rotary phone where you had to insert your finger to dial a 1, and you would tug at it from one side to the other, from that round disc until it went through to the other side. I wonder what my own kids would think of that phone today. So that was just something quick that I just kind of came up with thinking about. However, I think there's a lot that I missed out on in my own writing prompt. And so sometimes, we're the toughest critic of our own writing, but most writers say you just have to keep going. You got to get through that. And so writing as much as possible and then going back later and doing the editing and revision process usually helps you get over that hump of being your own critic. Okay, we will come back to short stories and creative writing in just a minute. We just wanted to move on to resume writing. All right, so how to write a resume. If you're thinking about a tablescape, you're creating a table and you're having people over, there's always that centerpiece, right? And so when we are writing a resume, you are that centerpiece. And how are you going to get the best of you onto your resume? This really is dependent on your career, on the specific job that you're looking for. I'm in education, so my resumes probably look very different than someone in marketing or in business. But these are just some tips that can kind of help everybody. So what you want to include in your resume, first and foremost, you want to start with your format, okay? And that's very career dependent. What kind of a job are you looking for will determine what kind of a layout you have. Is it going to be more simple? Or if you're a graphic designer, it probably needs to be a little bit more ornate. Maybe there's more colors. There's a lot of cool things that people are doing with resumes now versus when you just had the typewriter and you were creating a resume just with words. So people are using designs, color, graphics, and so I'll show you a few of those examples. So first of all, choose the right format that matches your career. And then you want to add all of the important contact information. And so what many people are doing to make sure that you stand out is your name should be the largest, right? You want them to remember your name. Some resumes even have a little profile picture in the corner so that they can see what you look like, but obviously that is personal preference. If you're comfortable with that, then you would add that. And then you really want to get all of that important contact information in as soon as possible. What is the best way to reach you? Depending on the job that you're looking for, is social media important? Do people need to have your Instagram tags or your X account, formerly Twitter? And then a telephone number and email address. What are the means to communicate with you depending on the job that you're looking for? All right, and then we need to start with a really great hook, and that could be a headline, that could be an objective. As a teacher in education, I need to kind of show my educational philosophy, my teaching philosophy, my objective for what I want to accomplish in my day-to-day, and so you might have something like that as well that you could add in there that's quick, that's a summary of the kind of the meat or the crux of what you want to get across to any prospective employers. And then you're going to prioritize previous work experience. And depending on how detailed you are, or if it's more of a bulleted list, again, is based on the format and the career that you're looking at. But you definitely want to give different examples of where you've worked and the years associated with that. Then you want to start listing out your educational background and any professional trainings that you've done, any certifications that are important for you to get this job. Those things also need to be there as well. And then finally, emphasizing your skills in a clear way. A lot of times it's helpful to read the job description, and you can grab some of the wording that is in the job description, work that you've already done, that you can include in there as your skills that you have. So all of these things can be listed out, or they can kind of be a little bit more into paragraph form, but the purpose of a resume is to get everything kind of short and sweet so that the employer can go through them pretty quickly. There's excellent examples on a site called Canva. So it's just canva.com. It is a really cool tool to create posters, flyers, and they have amazing resume resources. Canva.com is a place that you would go to get a free account, and then there's also always upgrade options if that works for you. But if you click on this link here, it takes you pretty quickly to a variety of resources around different types of resumes. So very traditionally, this one up here on the right, that would be more of a typical resume that I would have written at the beginning of my educational career. Just very simple, to the point. You have your education, you have your experience, any positions held, and all of your job skills are bulleted underneath every job that you've held. So that's more of the traditional way to write a resume. However, as you can see, what I was talking about, we've got pictures, a photograph of yourself, a self-portrait of some kind. People take professional face shots, headshots, and they put that on there. We've got color, we've got different fonts, different bolding strategies, different images in the background. So there's so much that you can do that isn't difficult if you're using a template on Canva. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody's aware of this really great resource that's out there and available to you. All right, and we are going to end class today with our homework assignment, which is to write your own resume. So I have the link for the templates. I also have a few Google Doc tips to also give you a Google Doc if that's where you want to get started, because we've been using Google Classroom. So if you would like to do your sample resume, just go to Google Classroom, start typing, and we can look at it and we can edit it together at our next class. All right, thanks for joining us for session 5, adult writing class. See you later. All right, we invited Scott back for a conversation about resumes and how that might feel to be writing a resume when you know that you have dyslexia.
Yeah, I think that one issue that people have is they don't want to express themselves on paper. They're afraid that maybe they're boasting about how good they are, or they're afraid that maybe they're not as good as what they're going to write on paper. But whoever's looking at that resume really needs to know what your talents are. One issue that a dyslexic has is that the question is, do I tell somebody that I'm dyslexic at a job interview? Mm-hmm. I am against that. And why am I against that? I'm against that because the person hiring shouldn't be judging you whether you can read or write, especially if the job that you're going for has nothing to do with reading and writing. That's why it's important, like you had said during the class, to submit it and to have somebody look at it and get the writing correct and the wording correct. But you shouldn't be judged on what the resume looks like. You should be judged on what your talents are. And that should be emphasized on the resume and when you go to a job interview. The job interview that you go to, you should really highlight what you do and how good you do it. And definitely don't go for a job that you're not qualified and there's a lot of reading or writing if that's not what you're good at. Go to the interview highlighting what your experience is, and if it's questioned, then just, I would say, again, highlight what you're great at, and you are good at that. Most people, you know what you're good at, and make sure that employer understands you're not hiring me to write. You're not hiring me to read. You're hiring me for my skill level, and that's what you need to tell them.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I respect your decision to tell your employer or to not tell your employer. I mean, every employer should be an equal opportunity employer where they shouldn't discriminate against you for your specific abilities. However, we know that sometimes you might feel that way. You might feel like you are being treated differently because of something about you, and specifically about your identity. So that's why, we have technology. We want to use it for the power of good. We want to harness it for good. And so we want to teach students, we want to teach adults here tonight that you can use these tools, these templates. It doesn't mean that you're cheating. You're just using a format, right? Yes, you're just using a tried and true format, and that's how you're going to submit your best self to the employer.
Yeah, you don't want this potential employer to judge you on your resume if it doesn't look perfect. So these templates obviously are great because it'll give you that format and that, at least that clean look of this is what I do. And if you really, and it doesn't have to be long.
you can keep it sweet and short and let them ask you the questions. That's the best way, because you talking about what you know is that's the best way to advertise yourself.
Exactly. And if it's hard for you to show your resume or your writing to a friend, try to find a friend, someone who you trust. However, there are certain AI tools that I would suggest you use just to make sure that if you do need that correct grammar and syntax, and you're not recognizing the errors, that you can easily put it into a Google Doc, do the spell check. The students use that all the time. And then Grammarly is something that a lot of people add on to their emails, and your emails are checked pretty quickly through Grammarly. You still get to make the changes, right? It doesn't change everything for you. It's still your decision to make that grammar fix or not. And so I really like that as a sample tech tool.
Yeah, no, that's great advice, especially with AI now, where it has so much negative publicity. This shows you where it can help you, and I've used it, and it's a great tool for us as a dyslexic. So, thanks, Kelly.
Yeah,
great.
anytime.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you.